Okay, new chapter 195. Made one solid adjustment, omitted some stuff that doesn't really matter, and unfortunately kept one thing that I wanted to see changed exactly the same. So let's start off with what Murata decided to keep the same. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Treating Gale Flame Duo as a joke undercuts their fight with Flashy Flash in the Monster Association headquarters, and also undercuts their debut when they revealed their monster forms to Sonic. So having the Heavenly Ninjas be able to pounce on them like they're nothing just feels inconsistent with their established combat abilities. And it frustrates me. Like, if you're just gonna clown on these two guys, just fucking put them out of their misery. Honestly, they should have never been resurrected in the first place so they could die with their dignity intact, but that's a topic for another video, not right now. The rest of this chapter added some much needed dialogue that was lacking from the original version. For starters, Sitch now questions Saitama about beating Garou, which seems like a conversation that would naturally need to happen. And Saitama is really casual about the whole thing, and I like how it flowed. Simple as that. This was a good addition. It felt natural. Then we get a flashback of the combo that Blast had with Sitch a bit earlier, where they talk about Saitama, and this conversation was also pretty interesting. Blast confirms that the Earth was in danger, and this is beside a picture of Blast looking at Garou's super move, Gamma Ray Burst, from chapter 165. And then Sitch says what I consider to be a perfect sentence. What on earth is Caped Baldy? It's already a really good sentence, and it's made even better since a serious character like Sitch is the one who delivers it. This line is probably my favorite part of the redraws because I feel like no matter how many times I read it, I'll still be able to laugh. Then Blast says he couldn't see the bottom at all, which I'm assuming is referring to Saitama's power. And this next part is a bit odd. Blast then says he didn't sense any malice from Saitama, so there shouldn't be any problem leaving him at large. Leaving him at large. To which Sitch replies, well, if we try to restrain him, I'm sure Demon Cyborg won't stay silent. I think it's interesting that the Hero Association would even consider restraining the guy who prevented Earth's destruction. Like, what does this say about their own moral values? That they don't have an issue with restraining a person who could potentially be a threat, even if that person has already helped them. You know, on that same note, I feel like this little bit may play into something that we previously saw. What if this is why Tatsumaki was initially locked up? And that's why Blast knew how powerful she really was. Was Blast partially responsible for her captivity? Because if you remember Tatsumaki's flashback in chapter 137, Blast is very aware of the extent of Tatsu's power. Because of the wording, I'm not exactly sure if the someone he's referring to is Tatsumaki, but if he is, notice how he's saying too much power here. I don't know, something's a little bit fishy about that whole deal. And I think, you know, this might play into it. Anyway, Sitch asks, do you think with this crisis averted, the prophesized crisis has ended? Not recognizing that Blast had already answered that question. If you guys remember, the prophecy was, Earth is in trouble. And Blast clearly says that the Earth was in danger. Blast didn't misspeak. This wasn't an error. Danger is not trouble. Trouble is trouble. Learn to read between the lines, Sitch. Pay attention. And then Blast says a greater threat than Garou is imminent. And to that I say, no shit. Because I feel like this line is meant more for the audience than it is for Sitch. Because Sitch already knows about God. Why would the thing that granted Garou its own power be less powerful than the thing he granted power to? Obviously, the God of Monsters is going to be more powerful than his creation. And the last thing I'm going to mention is what was omitted. We lose a bit of info about the demonsterization experiments that were being conducted, and to be honest, I don't give a shit. And we also lost Monaco's origin story, which I'm assuming Murata is saving for later, because I actually like the explanation we received. Because a while back, Monako says she's a girl, and that pissed me off at the time, because it did not look like this monster had any reason to have a gender, and I didn't see a reason why the gender of this monster would matter at all. And if anything, Monako sort of resembles Mike Wazowski from Monsters, Inc.
I'm watching you, Wazowski. Always watching.
So, if anything, she'd be a guy. But with her being a byproduct of Psychos' creation, it makes sense she'd identify as whatever gender Psychos was. I like when things that don't seem to make sense end up making sense, and it turns out I'm the one who missed a potential explanation. So this origin story was very satisfying for me. But no big deal. I'm sure he's saving it for later. I'm sure he's got a plan. Maybe, you know, Manaka will meet Psychos or some shit in the future. Who the fuck cares? It's not really a big deal. I don't really give a shit. But anyway, that was 165. Let's see how this continues. Hopefully, we get some of the actual stuff, like some ninjas dying. That's where the substance is. Like, this was all fine and dandy. I don't think it changed much. I thought it was alright. Whatever.